I want to begin with the most obvious question regarding your work. Look, we've got cotton, we've got flax, we have glass fibers, we have metal fibers, we have polyester, rayon, dacron. If we want silk, we've been doing that for centuries, unraveling these hapless little cocoons. Spider silk, what's that about? Why do we need another fiber? What does it give us that we don't already have?
So the main difference between spider silk and virtually any other fiber is that it has a combination of both elasticity and very high tensile strength.
Tensile strength being?
Tensile strength being basically the amount of weight that it takes to break a fiber.
Breaks. Okay.
And then if you put those two together, you get what's called an energy to break or toughness. So for instance, if you compare it to something like Kevlar, Kevlar is very, very high tensile strength, but has very little elongation. So what happens is that when it fails instantaneously. So if you watch, for instance, car races where they have Kevlar as the cord, when they fail catastrophically. The advantage for the spider is, and if you've ever seen one fall, what you see is that the silk actually stretches as the fiber goes. So it absorbs all that energy without breaking.
So it's the spider's version of a climbing rope, right? Those are the properties you want in a climbing rope, kind of?
Well, it depends on what people want for climbing rope. Some people don't want lots of elasticity, but for instance, the catch line on an aircraft carrier.
There we go.
There's what you want it for, because obviously you have a plane coming in at 160 miles an hour, and you have to stop it before it falls off the end of the deck.
Okay.
And so right now you use the steel cable and great big springs. And so it has a tendency to fail, and when it does, you have some serious problems. The advantage here is that if you had something like a cable of spider silk, that it actually stretch without having to use the springs.
All right, so aircraft carrier cables, that's a pretty specialized use. What else might we be able to do with spider silk?
Well, certainly I think one of the major areas that we're looking at are things like artificial ligaments and artificial tendons.
Yes.
There's nothing out there. We've actually done studies to show that the spider silk is not antigenic. You can implant it in animals.
That means we don't have an allergic reaction to it.
Don't have an immune response. Don't see it as a foreign body at all. And right now there's nothing out there. And we already know that we can make artificial silk proteins in the fibers that are as good as or better than ligaments and tendons. So the job is really to scale it up and then move there. There's lots of other uses people are talking about. We've talked with companies about replacing Kevlar for racing tires. We've talked about using it for clothing. There's always in the back of people's minds bulletproof vests, and it's certainly not something that we're ignoring, because I think that the material has that potential. But I think there are lots of other applications that would require a lot less material that people were there. There's a lot of interest in high performance clothing. We've talked to companies about putting it into shoes, as special cabling in shoes that would be both strong and flexible. For those sorts of things. So there's a pretty wide plethora of applications that people have talked to us about.
Well, I like the idea that when I blew out my knee in college, that had you been around, I might have become Spider-Man. Sorry about that.
Well, certainly, I had the same thing on my knee, and I have to say, compared to the operation, the design that we're thinking about would have made the operation much easier to do, and probably ended up with a better result.
But then there's the obvious disadvantage, right? Which is, how many people does it take to scoop up enough spider webs to make enough spider silk? So you came up with this strange, but apparently powerful solution involving goats and genes. What's that about?
Well, it's not only goats. What we looked for was, is there a system that we can produce the spider silk proteins, because the silk is made completely out of protein. And so that's easily amenable to genetic engineering. So we started in bacteria, became a very nice routine system to make small amounts, but commercially you're never going to be able to really produce enough. We were contacted by a company in Canada who had a system to be able to express proteins in goat's milk, and they were interested in doing the spider silk proteins. So we got together with them, used the genes we created, and made the goats. We're also doing it in alfalfa, and we've done it in silkworms. So we're not picking any one system. We're looking for a system that really applies to make the best kind of a material that we can.
And it's something that can crank out protein.
Lots of protein.
Okay. This has got a little Frankenstein tinge to it, doesn't it? I mean, putting spider genes in goats or even in alfalfa, Now, if we think about it, it's sort of a gut reaction, right? This seems pretty unnatural. I mean, science and technology have not always come up with great ideas in the long haul, right? The internal combustion engine seemed pretty clever. DDT seemed like a great idea. And then, well, we know what happens. So what about genetic engineering? Do we have reason to have more faith in scientists today that they'll anticipate and avoid the problems that we've had of previous technologies, or should we be freaked out by this?
I guess I think there are two reasons that I think the situation is different than it used to be. And I think, first of all, we're much more aware of what the consequences can be. And so I think people are more in tune with that, and therefore think about it ahead of time, at least try to think about mitigating any problems that you might have.
Okay.
You know, if you really think about it, even traditional breeding, you know, take a look in the grocery store now at some strange fruits that are there, right?
Right.
And those are crosses that people did that, you know, no genetic engineering except by accidents. I mean, beefalo is, you know, is a perfect example. I mean, it's an accident that happens one in every how many ever matings and whatever else. And yet people don't seem to be, you know, don't find that to be a strange thing. I guess from the genetic engineering perspective, we're very precise about what we do. You know, we know exactly where we put the gene in. We know exactly how we regulate it. So for instance, in the goats, we've actually tested, is there any protein being made any place but in the milk? And the answer is no. We can find no detectable protein any place else but in the milk. So, you know, that's about as clean a system as you can ask for.
So it's not like, right, mating a goat with a spider, where you're just really taking your chances.
No, I mean, we have very carefully controlled it. We control the system so that we know the spider silk protein is only made in the milk. It's only made when they're lactating. It's only made in the females. So, you know, it's about as tightly controlled as you can possibly ask for.
Well, there's a certain amount of risk that comes with living, and a certain amount of risk that comes with trying to improve our lives. So I suppose there's no guarantees, but we can certainly be more and less careful.
Right, and you know, in this case, the USDA and the FDA are both, you know, looking over our shoulders, making sure, you know, we explain how we do it, and everything's very tightly regulated in terms of what we're producing.
Thank you so much for taking time with me today. I really appreciate your insights.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.